I have been quiet lately, very quiet. So much so that I really didn't want to do this podcast. Wanted to just keep being quiet. And I also realized it was imperative of me to share this with those of you who follow this podcast, who listen intently, to understand the process that I go through, because it may be similar to something that you go through, or it may help you or support you in explaining something that you may experience from time to time and wonder what is happening, or maybe have assigned something to what you think is happening that isn't necessarily accurate. So here's what goes on for me. So I get quiet, and this is the process. I spend a lot of time writing. And for those of you who follow me on Instagram at underscore life's a Mitch underscore, you will see that I create a lot of quotes. These are things that just, I've always been a writer. It's been a part of my life. It'll always be a part of my life. It's a great joy for me. And when I'm creating quotes and writing about things, it's a it's a flow that just occurs. It's not a forced issue. It just happens. I'll get a thought in a shower or lying in bed when I wake up, something will pop into my head. Or I'll sit down and all of a sudden an experience will just suddenly take over and all of a sudden words just appear. And what I write really in essence is what I would call my current truth. Because I'll look at some of the things that I've written and I'll go back a year, 2 years, 3 years, 4 years, and I'll look at some of the quotes that I've written. I call them Mitchisms. I'll look at them and I'll go, oh, well, I would rewrite that differently now. So there's always this idea that the truth is easily upgraded as I move into a different place within my own consciousness. So it's easy for me to look at an old quote that I've written and see ways that I would shift it or change it and be able to identify that I've grown, my truth has shifted since then. But what used to scare me, which was pretty intense, but I no longer have that feeling inside, is when I'll go to write and nothing appears. Nothing comes forward. Or I'll be writing something, I'll have an inkling of an idea, and I'll be writing about it, and I just can't allow it the grace to find its shape. I'm trying to force it, and I start to get anxious and nervous, and there's a part of me that in the past would go, oh my God, I'm never going to have another thought again of substance. I'm never going to have another heartfelt experience that I can convey in the power that I find that words provide, and in the feedback that I get from people that it resonates, that I'm describing my truth, but it's very similar to their own. It doesn't have to be exact, but it's similar enough to their own that I've been able to put words to it to make sense of it. So I no longer get anxious or scared when I find myself at a loss for words. Sometimes I realize that I really do genuinely prefer the company of my own silence. I just love to sit in that. Because what I realize what's happening is the silence and sitting in that and being okay with it and really being respectful of it is that what's happening behind the scenes is my truths are going through an upgrade. They're going through their own transformation in terms of the way I'm seeing things. Because if it was so clear to me the way I was seeing things, then the words would flow. So I realized that the truths are catching up to me, newer truths. And so I start to then go, okay, so let me do what I've always talked about, which is be my best observer. Let me model that for myself and for other people. Let me be my best observer. And what is it that I'm observing? Because clearly in the silence, I'm realizing and I'm attuned to the fact that this is what's happening now, that I'm having my upgrade of my truths is going on. But I'll want to look at and I'll say, well, what am I observing about my past truths? And I'll start to look at, well, And I'll ask myself this question. I'll go, what was my truth at the time? So if I think about a job that I started, or I think about a project that I started, if I think about a role that I was playing, I'll literally ask myself, what was my truth at that time? And I'll be able to answer it in a way that helps me to understand that, yes, at that time, where I was at in consciousness is a direct reflection of what was true for me then. And the truth to me is always evolving as long as I'm always evolving. The truth is always transforming itself as long as I am in a place of transformation, as long as my inside game is consistent with my external game, that they're working together to create something magical. And that from time to time, like anything else, there is a space and place where pause must happen in order for a new truth to emerge, a more current reality, a more current truth to manifest itself. And so there's this initial feeling that I used to get of panic and fear that I can't find the words, that I'm never going to have another thought again. I'm never going to create another quote again. It's gone. It's over. It's done. And then all of a sudden, in the silence, and when I get quiet and I just sit in it and I just allow it to be a part of me, I realize what's going on behind the scenes is I'm just going through my truths catching up to me in terms of where I'm at. And I'll ask myself, because I realize that all of a sudden you'll find this for yourself over time as well, that as you become more attuned to what's happening inside of you, you'll start to see that sometimes you'll realize that there no longer is an energetic match between you and someone else, or you and other people, perhaps people that have been in your life for a while. You're realizing that the frequency that was once such a high vibration, such a high energy, is no longer there, because what's shifted is your truth. And let me just say, a truth. Your current truth is a truth. And you're connected to that. And when it's no longer working and it's no longer serving you, and all of a sudden you realize your connection to an environment, your connection to a person, your connection to experiences that were once fulfilling to you, all of a sudden they're not. That's not a crime. That doesn't mean there's something wrong with you. That just means energetically you're no longer matching up with that. So your ability to observe that and see that and then go, okay, so perhaps this is what's going on, is that my truths are shifting. And then I want to look at, so what was true for me at the time? And I'll observe that and I'll look at it and I'll answer those questions. And I'll say to myself, okay, now that I know what my truth was at a time, what can I say with certainty about where my truths are now? In what ways have my truth around a particular issue, person, situation, circumstance, in what ways has it evolved? And this is not a good or bad or right or wrong. It's just different. So the good part for me is that I realize that when I'm in that place of observation, I'm not in a place of judgment. At least in that moment, not towards other people, not towards a situation. I take ownership and responsibility for where I was at a particular place in time, the truth that was important to me at the time, that was valuable to me at the time, that was honorable to me at the time, and realizing that that has shifted. And that's okay. And that's okay. And it's like when I hear the silence, it's almost like a spiritual Tibetan bowls being played to the tune of Jeopardy, with the final Jeopardy question, dun, 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 dun. Like, but I'm not sitting there waiting. Like, it's not a countdown for me. It's really just me trusting that there's a process that I'm going through that I've experienced before, that is happening again and will continue to happen to me, as long as I keep pursuing greater levels of consciousness and transformation as I grow, that it will come to me, that the words will flow back to me and through me. And all of that will make sense. And that there's a beauty to be found in the company of my own silence. That I have this awareness of what's going on. So I don't have to answer if somebody reaches out to me and asks me a question about something that is maybe in that arena. I can say, let me get back to you. Or I could say, sometimes I'll listen to what a person has to say and they'll ask me my thoughts. I say, I'm working through that myself right now. And as I get clearer, I'll be happy to share what comes forward for me. But I don't feel compelled to have to say something. I don't feel compelled to have an answer, because right now, what I really am seeking is that next great level of awareness, that next great level of opportunity where I can seize something that's powerful and that's new and that's meaningful. And in the full transparency of all of this, as I take myself through this process, and as I become that observer, and as I identify that there's no longer an energetic match, and that's okay. It doesn't make me better or worse than anyone else. It's just no longer that match. I understand that my truth is now being upgraded. And so I'll spend the time and I'll say, well, what was my truth then? Did I have a particular agenda towards something? Did I have a particular idea about how I envisioned certain things to work out? And in what ways did it work out based upon that truth that I held? In what ways has my truth evolved to realize that I no longer want to tolerate what I tolerated, or allow what I allow, or make light of situations and circumstances that I realized at the time I was almost shocked that I would allow. And so that leads me to the last part, which is very, very critical in this. In order for a new truth to emerge, I can't have any judgment on it. The experience, the other person, the other situation, the other circumstances, the people involved. I can't. I just don't want to do that, because when I'm judging somebody else, I'm judging myself. So then I look at, okay, so where is the forgiveness component now? Because if I'm still judging myself, or I still notice that I'm judging other people, I know that I'm still judging myself. And I know that that is a stumbling block. That is a roadblock to get to that next level of truth. Because it has to be clean. The truth has to arrive on a line of loving, not on a line of judgment. Because now we're back into this weird right or wrong thing. Can't believe I allowed that. No. We all justify certain things that we've done, that we've participated in, that we've been a part of, that we've associated ourselves with. We have all these things throughout our lives where we do that, where we look back and go, given a set of circumstances, I probably wouldn't do that again because of where I'm at now, but it made complete sense for where I was then. And if there's any part of me in that experience, if there's any part of me in that experience that's judging myself, then I want to take myself through a forgiveness process. If I'm judging myself as stupid, if I'm judging myself as unconscious, then I want to take the time and walk myself through the process that I've learned so diligently over the past few decades, which is how to forgive myself for the judgments that I've held against myself in a really, really clean way, so I can release them, so I no longer have to carry them in my body. Man, like I said, the ultimate freedom is not in being right or wrong. It's just in being. It's just in being. And so when I allow myself to be, I can then allow others to be. And understand that we all make choices. We all hold certain truths to be a guiding post for us at a particular point in time that evolves because we've evolved. And suddenly that truth that we once held is no longer true today. And yet, if there is that last piece, if there's that last component where I'm still judging myself for putting up with something, for tolerating something, for not perhaps speaking a deeper truth, if I'm still holding on to it, it doesn't matter what it is. It's just anything that upsets any kind of peacefulness inside of me. Sometimes we get confused because we think, well, I'm not that bothered by it. To me, it's anything that creates any discomfort in my body, any discomfort in my mind, any. Because it's those little pieces that if we're still ignoring them, then what else are we going to ignore? What else are we going to now allow? No. It's about healing. It's about letting go of what no longer serves so that we can move towards things that actually serve a deeper truth about where we are right now and where we are headed and where we are going and who we're taking with us. And that's the opportunity. So if you find yourself in situations where you perhaps disconnect from people for a while, or you find yourself in situations where you've gotten quiet, or you start looking and evaluating where you're at in a situation and realize that, this doesn't fit anymore. This isn't an energetic match for me anymore. And you can move yourself through any judgment components that may exist towards other people, towards yourself, and honor that your new truth or truths in situations and circumstances are arriving, and they're not permanent. They will be a reflection of where you're at in consciousness in this moment. They will always be subject to change as they need to be. Don't lock yourself in. Greater levels of consciousness occur because you're willing to expand the way you think and the way you feel and the way you see the world around you and the way you see yourself in it. And when you do that and when you participate in that and you have that level of inside game always going, then you'll start to see that those outside gains that you make will be that much more powerful. And trust that truth, that new truth will present itself it'll just land, man. It'll just land. And you'll know. And you'll feel it and you'll experience it and you'll hold on to it tightly for the time that it exists within you. And you'll use it moving forward for the highest good of all concerned. I'm Mitch Newman. We'll see you again next time.